the region, please.
Gracias. Un saludo para todos. ¿Se escucha bien? ¿Sí?
Thank you.
Bueno, yo creo que
Well, I think that each country has an energy transition that is different, even though we're going to have similar challenges. So in each one of the operations, the different systems, there are different challenges. Sometimes we have network or grid congestions, and we have been able to overcome that. In other countries, there are grids that have no redundancy. There's a lot of radiality. So there is a challenge in operations. So we need to think about who maintains those grids. In other countries, the big challenge is the variability of the sources, as here in Chile, or the variability of the demands, and the central generation retirement, or the big challenges that we have. Many times we talk about the technical world, which is a talent transition. There is a knowledge transition that we're also dealing with in the electrical area. And for all of these challenges, there's a need that has to be maintained, and that is the integrated planification. This is a need, and this is a priority that we have to continue with. The coordination of the operation. This depends on the different realities of each country, but this is a reality. For example, the penetration of renewable energies has been very big. The increase of players is huge for an operator. So the coordination part is a challenge, and it is a big challenge. This is something that we have to deal with every day. But in this long-term planification, this is also vital. We need to consider the variables and the multi-criteria aspect to be able to consider benefits that go beyond the cost. So these are challenges that are related with innovations as well, where we have a lot of information because of the variability of the sources. Availability of calculation is as well something that is challenging, and the models as well. Many years ago, you would be able to dispatch a system at hand. You would run the formulas at hand, but now even the computing capacity is short. For example, renewables. In innovation, we also need to be able to take advantage of the networks that already exist. There are grids that have 1,000, 3,000 of capacity, and we can just use half of it. But there is technology that already allows us to take more advantage of that. The storage capability is growing in some places, but this is also a technology that is here to give more flexibility to the grids, and this is very important for the people that operate. So to finish about the priorities part, I would say that in each country we live different realities, but also Latin America and the Caribbean have a huge potential to give solutions to the world. I think that there is something that we can have a priority that is differentiated, and it is how we prioritize risks in each one of the countries, but also in each one of the regions. And if we are able to articulate an action plan together, and of each one of the countries that has the overarching learnings, I think that we can go from the transformation of the electrical systems, that's a very good document, by the way, to the transformation of the economic model of Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm just going to give you one piece of information. Transmission. When you get to the communities in some areas that have an important economic inequality, and you find opposition, the big question is, here goes the line, everywhere in Latin America, and also contribute to the global challenges.
It's interesting because the challenge and the motivation of this is, if Latin America has a natural richness that is so big, why can't we assume a greater role in the energy transition? So now we will talk with Marcelo.
Electricity demand is growing rapidly
La
across
demand
Latin America. From your perspective as a utility leader, what should be the top priorities to ensure that our power systems can accommodate this demand while remaining reliable and affordable? 3 a 4 minutos.
La pregunta, muchas gracias por
I had
invitarnos.
3 minutes. Thank you for inviting us. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
El colombiano que hablaba mejor que yo, chileno. Ahí está mejor, ¿no?
Now it's better. 3 things. Let's start with the high tension electric grids. I'm real, I'm practical, I'm not theoretical, I'm practical. For example, in the north of Italy, we have had winds up to 200 kilometers per hour, and we have had problems with the grid. And then we have had in the north of Italy a great amount of snow, more than any statistic. The maximum as say the lines that were through the Amazons, they had 150, they were rated at 150 kilometers of wind in the plateau, and the design is of 140 kilometers per hour. The topic of resilience have to be taken into account. That is the first topic. The second, the chapter that I wanted to mention, I have 2 minutes left, is to pay attention that in the locking the grid, what is fundamentally has is that we have to modernize the distribution grids, and we had 2.2 kilometers of air grids, and we give to 200 million people that we're giving distribution. The biggest challenge is the energy transition. When you have an electrification of a city, we're in Sao Paulo, you know that we're the head of department, the electrification of the consumption to avoid emission, for example, to have an electric kitchen and heating electric and hybrid car. Let's think that a car in the consumption in a house will be the double, because the hybrid car will double consumption. So imagine the growth of the electric world is the electrification of the consumption with a lower emission. So we have to strengthen the grid. So this is a need for any public to reinforce high tension, and then we have to have more modern grids, more efficient prices, decarbonized energy, to have night tariffs to charge the cars during the night. So this is the challenge. Resilience, high tension, planning, because to planning on the distribution, because I will say that we are 15 years behind to modernize this grid. So we need, in energy transition to enable every modernization changes. That is true that Latin America has the challenge to look at the future, so we can see the problems of the present and the past of the nanotechniques, and to have access. That is good, but we have challenges. So there is a...
Hay muchos desafíos. Muchas gracias. Ahora, hablando con Mauricio, building on this, technology deployment will be key. Technologies like HVDC, high voltage direct current, digitalization, and power electronics are already available, yet large-scale adoption remains a challenge. What mix of regulatory support, market incentives, and
so thank you so much.
Strategies are needed to scale these solutions and strengthen the region's power system?
Bien, muchas gracias Alessandra por la pregunta y muchas gracias a la web también por la invitación desde el punto de vista de los tecnócratas, digamos, los que estamos proveyendo tecnología, también un muy buen
Thank you. From the point of view of those who are supplying technology, this is very good. Alessandra was asking in which the regulatory framework that we should request. Nevertheless, I would like to have a picture with the data that were given by my colleagues before. We are in a very critical period.
Abastecimiento de energía y de rutas críticas como distribución, generación y transmisión. Si vamos a los datos, nosotros vamos a tener de aquí al 2050, donde todas las métricas se están yendo hasta el 2050, cada uno de nosotros va a consumir del orden del 80% más de energía. Aquí, bueno, Marcelo debería saber, digamos, históricamente las casas eran de 10 amperes, hoy estamos ya con 45 amperes y ya estamos pidiendo más, digamos. Un 80% más. En el tema vamos a ser 10 billones de habitantes en el planeta. O sea, prácticamente un 30%, 40% de los que somos ahora. Y por otro lado, el tema del Internet of Things, que vamos a tener cercano a los 500 billones de dispositivos conectados a la red. Eso es tremendo. Por lo tanto, eso habilita creaciones de data centers, temas de digitalización, power electronics, temas de HVDC, como comentaba Alessandra, que van a ser críticos. Dicho desde ese punto de la demanda, Luis también habló del punto de vista de la complejidad que tiene la oferta y la demanda, donde tenemos una generación bastante distribuida y una demanda que es bastante concentrada en ciertos puntos de consumo, pero que se producen un montón de fenómenos eléctricos desde el punto de vista técnico, desbalances, bajas de voltaje, pérdidas de factor de potencia, desconexiones, desincronizaciones con el GPS, un montón de fenómenos eléctricos. La buena noticia es que la tecnología está para solucionar esos problemas. Uno de ellos también comentaba Alessandra, que era el tema del HVDC, o la transmisión de grandes volúmenes de energía a distancias largas. El HVDC, bueno, ya estamos con cerca de 250 proyectos a nivel mundial. Nosotros en particular hemos instalado la mitad de esos proyectos.
We have installed half of these projects, but with a great technical advantage. With the permits and the homologies that we have, homologous, it will be reduced to a fifth. With the connections and the reactive potentials, with all the things that we have. But these will take some big challenges. There are some digital for vegetations, for those topics that we shouldn't be the ones that we should be charging fees for that. And we have new financial instruments, so tomorrow we can do that. So which is the variable that I would do tomorrow is that, so today, the electric car is 40% more expensive. And if I see this during my useful life, like the project, this is like of a lower cost, and we can do other investments and predictive maintenance, long-term, etc. This is the moment where the regulator is supposed to have a greater flexibility so they can approve some other models. So we're talking about the different tariffs that are developed in Brazil and how we can, which would be very good. Thank you. Now we will go to the second round. So each of the members of the panels have 2 minutes to answer a question, a closing question. So I will start with Guillermo.
From regulatory alignment to political commitment. From your country's perspective, what are the most important policy actions or regional collaborations that can unlock greater investment and accelerate cross-border integration?
Okay, thank you, Alessandra. Well, talking about regional integration, it's a matter we are discussing very more oftenly than before. We have several regional forums going on, many of them conducted by IDB, and I participate of some of them. And it's clear that regional integration is a way to better pursue the energy potential of the continent, because right now each country looks only for itself. Each country does its own energy plans and does not count on the neighbor. But if we look at the continent, instead of looking only for our countries, we will have the opportunity to get more generation potential that we could not if we keep looking only at our grass, at our neighborhood. The initiatives are going, but they always stops on regulatory barriers or legal barriers. So I believe this is the way we should attack to unlock those investments in regional integration, because physically and economically, it's very easy for us to recommend, but we always stops on regulatory and legal barriers, because it's very hard for a country, and I talk for Brazil, which is the biggest one in the continent. It's very hard for us, and I believe this is the reality for most of the neighbors, to let go our internal plans that stops and starts counting on the potential of the neighbors, which would for sure decrease the price, improve the renewables of every one of the continent, but it will put an element of insecurity for the governance of the energy structure of the country. So I believe if we can treat this element of risk, then I believe the whole path will be open, because technically it's recommendable and economically it makes sense. So I believe we should attack the regulatory, legal, and high-level authority decisions for us to improve those kinds of connections.
Thank you a lot, Guilherme. And this reminds me of the value of the exchange of best practice too in the region. Sim. Vamos hablar ahora con Luis.
Now we will talk with Lee.
How can governments and regional institutions better coordinate to align permitting, standards, and planning, so that grids projects are not only faster, but also more consistent across borders?
Gracias, Alessandra. Cuando uno mira las redes a través de las fronteras, tiene que entender que en cada país
to the
hay
different
una serie de necesidades que pueden ser muy
boundaries,
diferentes
and
entre
in
los
the
países.
different countries
Y
it
entonces
will
es
have
natural que en cada
different
país
needs in relation
se
to the
dé
different
una
countries. So
regulación.
each of the countries may have different regulations and relation to the transnationals. So there we have a big challenge. And here, if we look at everything that this document has, will prove the big advances and improvements. They talk about South and all the big initiatives that South America and the Caribbean have in the regional energy integration. But the problem is the speed. And then we should have and find an articulation in the national challenges that will overcome the supranational. And here is where the Economical Forum can have an important role, together with other entities that can group and can work towards some common long-term visions that should be much more articulating, allowing to solve the national things, because these are really real needs. So we think that there we have a big challenge. I cannot finish with my intervention, that I have to say that some of the big experience in Latin American country is that for an electric grid should work good for all the participants, the members of the chain should be doing well. And as transmitters, we should say that we have to accelerate the challenges of distributions that are big. You mentioned some of them, but we have some other challenges in regulation, in modernization of the networks. And from that, the participation, the collaboration, and these are very important, that the operators of the systems, they need a big support of all the actors, and we need the participation and collaboration. Thank you, Luis. Distribution has to deal with lots of the elements, which are those who are distributed with the bidirectional energy. So there are plenty of challenges in that future. And talking about utilities, Marcelo, it is a utility.
What role do you see for companies like Enel in advancing regional integration, whether by investing in cross-border infrastructure, aligning technical standards, or fostering new regional markets for electricity?
Muy bien, quería contar una historia que es real y lo conocen, yo creo que Mario.
I would like to tell a real history, and many of you will know. We built the biggest position, which was line 100, the biggest in Latin America, 2,000 megawatts, and separating the frequencies was in different hertz in 2002. You remember we connected Argentina and Brazil. This was a great, then all these big gas was sold to Brazil, that they had a draft. They were selling cheap. And when there was a lack of gas, water from Brazil, we connect 2,000 megas to Argentina. We had a great project. At one moment, they have a crisis in Brazil, in Argentina, and then Argentina increased the dollar, and then they said no more gas for Brazil because they had a shortage of Brazil. So in the integration, the countries have their own rules to have a privilege of the consumption for their country. So what Argentina did was to have a privilege for Argentina for their consumption. For a lot of time, we couldn't dry our clothes in the dryer. The reduction in cost, what Brazil had to do because they didn't receive energy from Argentina. So first of all, national priority is a reality. Second, the solution to that is what is the most important thing is Brazil said at the end that this is not aligned, that private operators could do this in between two powerful governments. You can be a big company, but between two other governments, you can be small. So what Brazil did was to put within the regulations all the network. Brazil had 90% of the AT payment. So once had
The line the different countries. But project.
En resumen, por favor, esta historia hay que entenderla. El ser humano tiende
So, in summary, we need to understand this. That human beings tend to repeat things. So, in the regional aspect, we need to be careful about the priorities, the normal, and that's at their own criteria. And the last thing, the planification between Spain and France. The last interconnection I got to Spain in the year 2000, and they took 20 years to connect. Just a line of 1 megas, so 2,200 kilometers. Everyone was opposing that. So, commitments of the governments, regulated networks, and then we can operate. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Marcelo.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Una buena noticia
Now,
é que a regulação
good news is that
caminha
the regulation goes along
problemas, elas
in
solucionam
terms of the
estamos
solutions.
todos vivendo
We are all living
os mesmos problemas, não?
the same
Então,
problems,
por
right?
exemplo, em Brasil, vimos o câmbio para versões
For cost
da empresa
knowledge,
modelo para custos
the
reais.
model
Esse é
companies.
ponto também que hoje
So
é falado
that is also a
em outros
point
países.
that we're talking about
Entonces,
in other countries. So
talvez para o futuro tengamos
yeah,
mais
maybe for the future,
homogeneização, não?
we are going to be more
How do you see the role of innovation partnerships between technology providers, utilities, and governments in accelerating adoption and building resilient supply chains for the region?
Es una pregunta que da una respuesta bien larga, ¿no? Pero
This is a
vamos a
question
tratar
that
de resumir y unirla
has a
en
very
la
long answer. I'm going to try to summarize
Marcelo
to
contaba
give
del proyecto que
the
hicimos
answer.
de
But
conexión,
Marcelo was saying about the intro
perfecta,
perfectly because
pero
we
ese
worked
proyecto
together
para
in there.
ejecutarlo tomó
But
2
that
años.
project, to be able to
Que
execute
llegue a
it, it
Chile,
took
que
2
está
years.
liderando también mi
The
colega
project
Luis,
that
tomó 10 años.
my colleague Luis is executing
Entonces, hoy
took
por hoy
10
tenemos un
years.
tremendo desafío.
So today we have a
Proyectos
big
que se toman
challenge
10 años
that
de
the projects
ejecutarse,
that take
no se
10
pueden.
years to be
O sea,
executed
ya necesitamos
are
3
born dead. So
adicionales para
we need 3
complementar
more
la
additional projects
previsibilidad que nos estamos
to
dando a nivel regional.
complement
Y creo
this,
que
that is
es
killing us
es
at a regional level. And I think
una
that this
opinión
is
muy consensuada que
an
Chile
opinion that is very
es
well
uno de los
consensus,
más
is a
críticos
consensus.
con
Chile
el
is one of the
tema
most
de
critical
permisos.
countries in
Se
terms
habló
of
también el tema de la
permits.
movilidad de las personas,
We also
que
talked about the
nosotros
mobility
tuvimos
of
la
the
mala
people,
experiencia en Chile
and we had the bad
no haber
opportunity, the
terminado
bad
como ejecución del proyecto
experience in
Hidroaicén.
Chile
De
to not have
Hidroaicén
finished
al
the
medio privado nos
Hydro-Aysén
costó
project.
un montón de inversiones, mucha
We
participación
had to put in a lot of
y bueno,
investment to
felices la
train
gente
people, and as the
terminó
project
yéndose
did
a
not
otros
happen,
países a trabajar.
then people
Los
left
cesantes
to
ya
other
no
countries to
trabajan,
work. So we
se
had
ponen
people
ese efecto.
that knew a
Entonces,
lot and that
cuando
were
uno ve
unemployed.
desde el punto de vista técnico,
So
cómo
when we
podemos
see
poner de
from the
acuerdo
technical
para
point of
que haya
view how we
inversión, para que
can
haya instrumentos
agree
financieros,
so that we
para que el
can
privado
have
pueda
this
los tipos de tecnología,
decide
tenemos
the
que
types
ponernos de
of
acuerdo como
technologies,
sociedad
we
en
need
qué
to
es lo que
agree
queremos.
as a society
En base,
what
como
we
Hidroaicén
want.
fue demonizado, ok, no hay problema
The
porque
project
nosotros
was
parece,
demonized.
pero
Okay,
solamente hay
that,
3
you don't
maneras
like
de
dams,
solucionar
but there are
técnicas
just 3
en
ways to
embalse,
store dams
en energía fósil, combustible,
in
gas,
fossil fuels
carbón, etcétera, o baterías.
or in
Por lo
batteries.
tanto, hay que hacerle la vía fácil a alguna
So
tecnología que
we
nosotros decidamos
need to
técnicamente
use
ejecutar.
the technology that
Eso
we
primero.
want
Ahora,
to boost.
viendo todos los puntos, que es malo que me
Now,
salte Luis,
looking
porque
at
después
all
tengo
of the
que cambiar la
points,
respuesta y que
it's bad that I took the last
tengan los
place
mismos,
here
tenemos las mismas
because we have all the
opiniones,
same opinions.
básicamente. Pero
But
respecto a esa
in
estrategia, nosotros
about
hemos
that
visto que
strategy,
se
we
crea un
have
triángulo
seen
virtual
that there is a
entre lo que es
virtual
provocado por
triangle
la
amongst what
complementariedad, la alianza estratégica entre los
is
tecnólogos,
produced
digamos, y la
by
empresa,
the
y
different
por otro lado está
strategies
el
of the
tema
companies
político
and also the
político que nos
political
da que
area or
surja
the
este tipo de tecnología.
policies to
El tema
boost this
político,
type of topics. The political
estamos de
topic
acuerdo, digamos,
is
distintos
that we
teniendo
need
la
to
digamos,
agree upon the
independiente
matrix
del
that we are
proyecto que
going
tiene
to
cada uno,
choose,
pero
independently on
nada es
the
gratis
pros and the
y toda
cons that
decisión
they
es
have. But
igual, ¿no?
nothing is free, and
Todas
all
las decisiones
decisions
son difíciles, fácilmente
have
no son más,
some
menos.
bad points.
Por otro lado, el tema del cambio de mentalidad. A nosotros nos da
The
una tremenda
change of
pena
mentality, it
cuando
is
llegamos
very
y
sad for us
estamos
when
hablando de
we
2, 3, 4, incluso hasta 10
were
años
talking
atrás
about
en algunos países,
10 years ago in
el
some
tema de la red
countries,
eléctrica estaba considerado
where the
un
electrical
negocio
grids
secundario.
were considered as a
Políticamente nadie
secondary
le
asset.
interesaba tener
Politically
construir
speaking,
una
nobody
estatal
was
permiso para
interested
construir una
in
línea.
building a
Hoy por hoy
line,
se
given a
transforma en la
permit to build
columna
a line.
vertebral de toda
And
esa
today,
energía
this is
nueva.
a spine of all of the
Y pienso
energetic
que la meta es
development.
hacer el país más verde, hacer la matriz energética más verde.
So we always
Esa no es la
think
meta.
about the greener
La meta al
countries, the
final del
greener
día, el
matrix,
KPI, es bajarle
but the
nuestra
KPI
1,5
is
grados
to
Celsius de aquí
reduce
al 2050.
1.5 Celsius degrees
Y
from
se nos
here
está
to
acabando el tiempo, estamos
2050, and we're running out of
generar
time.
cierto cambio de mentalidad.
So change of
Me encanta
mentality,
el tema de alianzas estratégicas que
and
lo
also
mencionaba.
the strategic
Desde el punto de
alliances.
vista
This is something that
tecnológico,
we're talking about. From the
tenemos todo resuelto.
technological point of view,
Hay
almost
transformadores
everything
hoy
is
por hoy
resolved.
que
We
usan
have
caracteres vegetales,
transformers
que también
today
son 100%
that are
biodegradable,
plant-based,
que a
that
su vez
they're
tienen mayor
biodegradable,
capacidad de
and they have
transformación.
a
Por
bigger
lo tanto,
capacity of
bajo el mismo paso,
transformation.
bajo la misma
So
estructura,
in the same
podemos tener
space, in the
redes
same
mucho más
structure, we can have more resilient grids and more efficient ones. The electronic digitalization is something important. We're talking about HVC, which is a technology that is absolutely recognized globally as the technology that changed the life of many people. So from the technological point of view, we have that, but we need the incentives and we need to take advantage of the technology wave. And let's not be damaged by permissology that has had very delayed investment. Thank you very much, Mauricio. And we also need to consider that the new technologies have a shelf life, so they are replaced. The recognition of the regulation is something that is very relevant in that aspect. So not waiting for this cycle of 4 or 5 years so that we can have the recognition. About the alliances, we need to talk about the role of each one of the parties. I think that we are ready now for 1 or 2, if we have any. I have a question for Marcelo.
About grid, how important it is that we have
para un seminario, ¿no? Vamos rápido, ¿no? Vamos rápido. 25 años atrás, la Comunidad Europea trató de que el 80% en Smart Meter en 2020. Toda Europa tiene el 95% de medidores digitales. Voy a decir medidores digitales para que suene no tan digital. En él hemos cambiado 2 veces en 25 años, porque la vida útil son 10, 15 años. Entonces, la tecnología está bastante avanzada, es como un iPhone 17, ¿no? Entonces en Chile hay un iPhone, no sé, 10, 12, no sé, el número que quieran. La percepción del beneficio la tiene la autoridad italiana, y es verdad, nosotros tenemos 32 millones en Italia, tercera generación, en España, segunda generación, 12 millones, es un montón, estamos hablando de 45 millones. Ellos fueron aprobados por el regulador porque viene el costo-beneficio. Termino diciendo los beneficios después de los problemas. En los beneficios, esta noche llevar la mitad del precio, me sale un 100 kilómetros, evidente. Y los súbitos. De hecho, la ley chilena establece que en algunos clientes especiales hay que tener un Smart Meter en 2020, ¿no? Digo así, súper claro, nosotros ya los tenemos. Después está el tema de la net metering. Tú pones fotovoltaico, cargas el coche, tarifa horaria, y lo que haces es tener un centro productor en tu casa de energía. Después tienes la elección. En 6 horas tú puedes elegir el generador o el comercializador. Cambiar la elegibilidad que Chile necesita. Chile necesita poder elegir, como lo hace en la telefonía. Después hay otro más, puedo seguir, la calidad por punto. Termino con... 1 millón, son 7 millones, faltan 6 millones todavía, estamos poco a poco. Pero ojo, que todo esto al final reduce los costos de operación. Esto es lo que el regulador italiano entendió. Y eso es lo que Chile, yo creo que lo entiende muy bien, lo entiende Estados Unidos, lo entiende Inglaterra y toda la Europa. Cuando tú haces esta cosa que a distancia menos calidad, la mayor costo operativo que tiene una red son las fallas. Y Chile tiene 10 horas más o menos de fallas media año, horas por cliente. Y en Europa tenemos todo menos de 1 hora. Entonces, ¿tú qué prefieres? ¿Tener 10 horas o 1 hora? Todos los políticos dicen 1 hora. Cuando tú reduces 9 horas, la calidad que merece un chileno quizás es 1 hora, los costos operativos bajan. Entonces todo bien. Digital, costos de operación, modernización, venta de energía, elegibilidad, tarifa, comercialización. En resumen, todo esto son las ventajas que hay que explicar muy bien a la comunidad. Muy bien a la comunidad si no lo entienden. Al menos en todo lo que es Brasil está muy avanzada y esa sería la parte positiva. De la parte negativa sería de no comunicarlo bien, lo dije en forma implícita. Cuando uno no lo comunica bien, hay una resistencia natural en las personas porque piensan que el proveedor de servicio público, las empresas de distribución, van a como a trucar un problema con el medio. Esa sería la segunda. Pero créeme, tercera generación, estamos en el iPhone 17, todos los europeos, importante, hay que hacer upgrade, pero son todos beneficios certificados por todas las universidades. Así que yo invito siempre al diálogo con todos nuestros compañeros de las empresas de Smart.
Difícil ser capaz de volver la red más flexible y difícil ser capaz de volver la red más flexible y en su mayores margen de seguridad, márgenes, porque no hay certeza en nada. Entonces los medidores inteligentes te pueden dar mayores márgenes. Y en muchos países de Latinoamérica también las mediciones inteligentes ayudan mucho también a reducir pérdidas negras.
Bien, hay muchas más, son 14 funcionalidades, he dicho 5. Bien, gracias, pero no quiero tomar más.
Muchas gracias. Agora mais uma pergunta e depois cerramos. Está bien?
Sí, buenas tardes. Más que una pregunta, un comentario. Yo soy Oliver Balser, trabajo en una empresa que promueve las Grid Enhancing Technology, especialmente los conductores de alto desempeño. En el sentido de, creo que actualmente tenemos una fuerte presión sobre las redes, todos lo hemos dicho, la generación está medianamente resuelto, pero necesitamos esos corredores. Y actualmente existen cierta tecnología, hablamos de modernización de redes, que permiten, con el uso de esos conductores de desempeño, duplicar, no del más 40%, sino de derechamente usando la misma estructura de torres, servidumbre, sin licenciamiento, sin una mayor complicación para la comunidad a nivel social, etc. Y a 30% del costo de hacer una nueva línea, y en una nueva línea se hace en 6, 7, 10 años, ¿no? Entonces, eso existe, se ve que existe, pero no se ha masificado, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que una de las preguntas que tenemos que hacernos es, ¿por qué no se masifica? Una empresa transmisora seguramente estaría feliz de modernizar sus assets, le dan un incentivo que va en línea de esto, nadie trabaja para gratis, ¿no? Básicamente. Y empresas como ISA, Luis, vemos que, por ejemplo, en Brasil están de camino de modernizar sus assets cuando en Colombia no lo hacen. Entonces, ahí claramente vemos que falta el incentivo regulatorio para poder ese camino. Y eso es para conductores de alto desempeño, pero también con otras tecnologías, y esas tecnologías también son complementarias entre sí, TLR, Dynamic Line Rating, con conductores, etc. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Yo quisiera, hay veces la gran dificultad y el desafío en los países es reconocer la necesidad de largo plazo para anticiparse a ese tipo de obras. Y reconocer esa necesidad de largo plazo pasa por lo que hemos llamado la planificación integrada. Y entonces yo creo que ahí nos cabe un desafío grande también. Planificación integrada con almacenamiento, con medición inteligente y con aquellas tecnologías que permiten hacer mayor uso de lo que ya hoy tenemos. Incluso si es reconvertir una línea en potencia o reconvertir una línea en...
Ok. Sí, bueno, podríamos quedar acá hasta el fin del día hablando. Rica, muchas gracias a los panelistas. Tuvimos una discusión de distintos temas, pues que estamos también a disposición para hablar después. Y me gustaría ahora, por favor, de llamar a Espen para que haga las consideraciones finales.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. Thank you, dear panelists. It's been great. Thank you also to participants and audiences in a fascinating discussion. It's impossible to summarize, but I think everybody realizes how important these electricity grids are for the future, right? Be it for meeting the climate goals, be it for lowering the energy cost, be it for reutilizing the renewables and bringing value to everybody. So just a big thanks to all of us today, but also to all who have contributed to making this report possible, because it's been a big process with different workshops. There's really thought going into this. I really hope this can also be leveraged and used here in the region. Just to say, from the World Economic Forum side, what are we going to do? We're taking this more to the global level as well. We have a Future of Power Systems initiative where we're looking at the intersection of AI and digital solutions, how to optimize that. We're looking at case studies. We're also looking at how to mobilize investments into the electricity system, grids, but also beyond, and really driving dialogue between the financiers and the electricity sectors. And thirdly, we're looking at the innovation aspect, because so much innovation is happening and so much innovation needs to happen across the electricity system to deliver that future. So Marcelino talked about, I think, the crisis, electricity grid crisis. I think if you see it as a crisis or an opportunity, it doesn't matter. We need to make it happen. And I just want to thank everybody for your contribution today. Big applause to the panel as well.
Al otro lado.